It's a topic we've come back to a few times here at Novara. The Panorama documentary Is Labour Anti-Semitic? It did huge damage to Jeremy Corbyn's electoral prospects in 2019, and now it's in the news again. That's because a heated row about it has broken out in the pages of The Guardian. So the story here begins with an article written by George Monbiot. Its main point is that Starmer's Labour Party is wasting a lot of money and political capital by pursuing a lawsuit against 5 associates of Corbyn, or 5 staffers in Labour when Corbyn was leader. They're accused of leaking an internal Labour report to the press in April 2020, the so-called Labour leaks. But the part of Monbiot's article that's caused the fuss is about one interview in the Panorama documentary. Let's look at the clip in question. It's with Ben Westerman. He was a complaints investigator for the Labour Party and is also Jewish. He's being interviewed by John Ware, the journalist behind the Panorama episode.
Ben Westerman received dozens of complaints. While interviewing one member, he was confronted with the very anti-Semitism he'd been investigating.
And we finished the interview. The person got up to leave the room and then turned back to me and said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "What do you mean, where am I from?" And she said, "I asked you, where are you from?" And I said, "I'm not prepared to discuss this." And they said, "Are you from Israel?" What can you say to that? You are assumed to be in cahoots with the Israeli government. It's this obsession with that just spills over all the time into anti-Semitism.
At the time the documentary aired, nobody knew which party member was under investigation for that, but it later emerged that the person being questioned was Helen Mark. She attended the disciplinary meeting with her friend and fellow Labour member, Rika Bird, who joined her as a witness. Both Marks and Bird are Jewish and both are pensioners. This is what Monbiot wrote about the Panorama clip. Perhaps the most decisive blow to Corbyn's leadership was the BBC Panorama programme Is Labour Anti-Semitic? It interviewed a former Labour official who, it claimed, was confronted in a disciplinary hearing by the very anti-Semitism he'd been investigating. He alleged that the woman he was questioning asked him, quote, "Where are you from? Are you from Israel?" unquote. But the 2 women in the meeting, both of whom are Jewish, had recorded the conversation with his permission. Backed by their recording, whose veracity no one seems to have disputed, they say it shows that she said something entirely different. Quote, "What branch are you in?" unquote, meaning what branch of the party. And that when he told her he didn't think that was relevant, she said simply, "Oh, okay." Now, that part of George Monbiot's article was enough to set the Panorama producers off. John Ware and the show's producer Neil Grant fired off a letter to The Guardian. In it, they said this: "He refers to a tape recording which he suggests shows that the account given to Panorama by a Labour Party official investigating allegations of anti-Semitism in Liverpool was wrong in recalling that he'd been asked by a Jewish woman if he was from Israel. In fact, the tape to which Monbiot refers is not definitive of the entirety of the conversation, since it stops abruptly just at the point when the official says he was asked if he was from Israel, having been twice pressed by the woman to say which Labour branch he was from. She did not, as Monbiot writes, simply say, 'Oh, okay,' and leave it at that when he declined to answer her question by saying it wasn't relevant. She persisted, 'Oh, no, it might not be relevant, just thought it might be interesting.' So the conversation seemed to be heading in the direction recalled by the official before the tape cuts out. Now, it's unclear why that would be heading in the direction recalled, but in any case, unluckily for the show's producers, that recording is widely available online, and it doesn't really seem to abruptly just cut out like they claim. Now, this is a recording of that meeting. It's published by The Canary. We're going to play it right to the end. You'll hear the voice of the investigator, Ben Westerman, and the witness, Rika Bird, is the person asking questions.
There's nothing more for me to say on that.
Okay. I don't know whether you want to. No, I'm just curious because I haven't been in the Labour Party very long, and I've certainly never been to anything like this informal interview before. So I'm just curious about, what branch are you in?
I don't think that's relevant.
Oh, okay.
I hope that's okay. I don't think where I'm from is at all relevant to the investigation.
Yeah, I just misunderstood. I thought the investigation bit about me not being a silent witness was...
No, it is. You're more than welcome to ask questions, but I reserve the right to not answer them, and I feel that's a question about my personal situation, which I don't think is relevant to the situation in Full Riverside.
Oh, no, it might not be. It's just, but it might be interesting.
I'm not prepared to discuss my address, basically.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you have anything else to add or any questions that you have regarding anything, obviously feel free to email me. I'll make a note of what you said about the SAR, and I'll pass it on to the data
About
protection, the subject access request.
Yeah.
SAR.
Yeah.
And I'll pass it on. I'll just say that I'll, make sure it was done thoroughly. As I said at the beginning, I will draw up my conclusions and pass them on to the NEC Disputes panel in January, after which we hope to get an AGM sorted as quickly as possible. Because obviously we're outside of the year now, so we need to get that done quickly.
Yeah.
And move forward.
Great.
So thank you for your...
That recording doesn't seem to end too abruptly at the point they talk about. So how did Ware and Grant come to the impression that the recording cuts out just after Rika says, quote, "just thought it might be interesting"? Now it didn't cut out after that. That's what they said in the letter. Now, could it be that they haven't bothered to listen to it all at all? Now, I hope so. Otherwise, it seems just like a straight falsehood. The women were interviewed for Al Jazeera's Labour Files. That's a 4-part documentary looking into the contents of the Labour leaks. Here's what they said.
When he says, where are you from? Are you from Israel? That's an absolute lie. I didn't say that.
With Westerman's permission, the two women record the interview.
The full recording shows what actually did happen. Curious, because I haven't been in the Labour Party very long, and I've certainly never been to anything like this informal interview before. So I'm just curious about, what branch are you in?
I don't think that's relevant.
Okay.
I hope that's okay. I don't think where I'm from is at all relevant to the investigation.
I did ask Westerman, what branch are you from? Meaning what branch of the Labour Party, because it was a Labour Party internal investigation. The word Israel never came into the exchange between me and Westerman.
At the time, I could hardly believe it, but I actually feel very angry about it now, because I feel it's so trivialising what is a really important issue.
So from John Ware's letter, it seems like he could have watched that, right? But there was a minute after that. So I don't see how they think it could have abruptly ended if they'd seen the whole clip. Anyway, those two women have now written into The Guardian too. So in response to the letter from John Ware and the programme's producer, they said, the programme makers continued to defend the sequence on the grounds that the Israel question may have been asked after the tape was switched off. We emphatically deny that this was the case. The tape runs for a further minute of amicable chat about procedural matters. Not only did we not ask the question, it is inconceivable that we would have done so. We are both Jewish pensioners, a fact that Panorama failed to mention. The programme makers have at no stage offered us the opportunity to refute their false allegations against us. We trust that they will now withdraw them and apologise. Now, it seems unlikely they will withdraw them and apologise because, the BBC and the journalists behind us have been doubling down on this for months now. But it does seem really, really bizarre to me, right? So you've got a claim from one individual. So one individual who is working for the Labour Party saying something which I have to say is quite implausible. It seems pretty odd to me that you would have some people in a disciplinary meeting asking someone, are you from Israel? Right? I mean, for one, clearly the guy was British, right? You heard his accent in that recording there. You'd have to be a very strange person to ask the person, are you from Israel? So it seems implausible off the face of it. Then we have a recording of the interview where that's not said. And the point at which John Ware seems to think it would be said, we can actually hear that. There is, as these two ladies say, amicable chat. So this to me, we don't have proof that it didn't happen, but the weight of evidence to me seems to suggest it probably didn't. And the weight of evidence definitely doesn't suggest it did. Yet you have a documentary that used this as one of its core claims. And it wasn't just any old YouTube documentary. This was primetime BBC, which was incredibly damaging to one of, to the person who wanted to be the next prime minister, to the leader of the opposition. Now, that is really important. And it seems to me there hasn't been any justice done here, right? Everyone is just happy to sweep this under the carpet. And they say, oh, well, this is over. Well, this was a big issue that brought down a party leader, right? And so if one of the core pieces of evidence in that whole row turns out to at best seem, based on, sloppy evidence, seems weak. You had, you got one witness, two other witnesses there deny it and have, some prima facie evidence that it didn't happen. Then that seems to me that it shouldn't have been broadcast on prime time on the BBC. And that we're still seeing them double down when you've got someone like George Monbiot sort of saying, oh, I've looked at all the evidence, this seems implausible. And then you've got a letter essentially from the director and the producer, which I think, does misconstrue the evidence, because they say the recording cuts out straight after a part at which it doesn't cut out. It looks very sloppy to me. And this is important, right? Because this, what I think looks like fairly sloppy journalism, had a huge impact when it came to the course of politics in this country, and still is accepted by journalists left, right, and centre as being a good bit of quality journalism, which was a real, expose. This was truth to power. This was really upstanding journalists standing up for a minority against a sort of brutal and vicious party leadership, when actually it seems like it was kind of just smearing nice old people.